I'm Ruki De Silva, founder, Chief Visionary Officer of 361 Degrees. Simply because most of the organizations, they employ talented people. Though they employ talented people, they fail to harness their full potential. That's where we come in. We help them to identify the real issues that is blocking their potential and inspire meaningful action in order to overcome those challenges, and then to give them tools to make sure that they maintain those momentum. So at the end, what are we going to bring to those organizational peoples would be that they can dream bigger, they can work smarter, and live happily. And I have been doing this for the last 18 years.
Hi guys, my name is Fahad Farook. I'm a trainer, compeer and a speaker. I'm also a certified transformative coach. My goal is to change the perspective of every single person I meet at least a little bit. So I don't like to work at a formal sort of office, so this is sort of my setup. I work at different coffee shops and restaurants because I find it to be more relaxing. On this week's episode of the Cubicle, you'll get to know me a little bit more.
How effective do you think corporate training is?
Corporate training is effective, but in order to make sure that it is effective, the senior management should be very committed for it. And at the same time, the training programs that we do should really address the intrinsic motivation of the employee. If not, it's not effective.
Well, I think it depends on what you want to achieve. Sometimes the training programs, people want to say that they did a program, sometimes they want to upskill employees, sometimes they want to have a long-term change. So each of these things requires a different sort of setup. So if you're thinking about doing like a one-day training program and expecting a long-term change, it's probably not going to happen.
When you are trying to change a person, what is the biggest thing or challenge you need to consider?
When we try to change a person, the biggest challenge is that whether that particular person understands whether there is a real need for a change. If he or she is not convinced that there is a performance gap or a behavior gap, as far as that particular insight is not considered by the individual, change will not happen.
When it comes to changing a person, it is not about that act of changing, but rather connecting back to the why or the purpose of that person's change. So whether that change comes internally or whether there is a realization for that change, whatever those things are needs to be connected to a purpose for that person. So it's about starting with why should I change? Sometimes we might discover as we proceed that there's no reason for change. So it's not about the action, but about the purpose.
How do you prepare before going to training?
Preparation is that I need to understand the business context, and then the reason for the training, and then who's coming in, what am I supposed to deliver at the end of the program. That is very important. If I don't know what's at the end of the program, it's a huge challenge. And at the same time, I need to understand why these people are selected. So I really look at those things. And then the other issue is that about whether do I need to do more research in order to serve the need. So if I need to serve the need, then I need to do research and then to get things sorted out. And then I'll be able to deliver the training impactfully the next day.
I think there are several contexts there, and the first context is what is the larger picture in terms of the deliverable. So is this training fulfilling a purpose within a larger context? If so, what is that context? B, what is the short and long-term goals that you expect out of this training? And C, in terms of behaviors of the people who come to the training, like, when they go back to work, what are the sort of behaviors you want them to exhibit? So I need to know these things in order to craft the program. And then what I do is, in order to get there, sort of create experiential learning scenarios where I get to pass those messages to ensure those outcomes. But that's one aspect. In a more day-to-day aspect, before preparing for a training program, I have my soundtracks that I listen to. get myself in the mood, get myself, fired up, and then I get into. So that's the whole personal side of preparing for a training.
How do you prepare before going to training if there isn't requirement?
If there isn't a requirement, that's a challenge. But in the same time, once we get there, so then we can get the audience to engage in some sort of a larger level need, and then we can distill into some of the challenges that they have, and then pick out some of the key issues that they're facing. And then as far as it sounds right to proceed on that angle, that's a tough call. And then go on with the training program. But in the same time, there are times that even midway through a training program, we may have to do course correction. So sometimes we feel that this is not exactly what is required. So even if we are prepared, there are times that in the halfway through, when we realize the real challenges that they're facing, we change the program as well.
Well, ideally, that shouldn't happen because, the training industry has evolved so much that it's not about HR tells you to come to a program and then you turn up there and do a program, right? So you have to sort of see what is the back end in terms of the participants who are going to be at the program, and in that process, probably you will discover whether there is an actual need or not. Ideally, it shouldn't happen. But on the rare occasion that it does happen, I think my approach is to deal with the people who are there. Is there any value addition I can give them that will affect their personal or professional lives, if it might not even be in the context of that organization. But overall, how can we add some value to them?
How do you deal with difficult audience, especially when there is a huge crowd?
Difficult audience, it could be in two ways. As you said, it could be very difficult people. At that time, we need to make sure that we establish credibility. So there are multiple ways that we establish credibility. There are times that we do some of the experiential tricks to make sure that we establish our authority and also earn the trust and the credibility from the team. So we need to be very crafty in that. Then the other question is, if it's large, then if it is a large audience, then it's a challenge. So then we need to make sure that we try to find ways to keep them engaged. So we need to make sure that we ask questions, do smaller activities. We cannot get into the larger experiential activities, and in the same time keep them on the toe. So we got to do all those things in order to keep a large audience intact.
I think one of the keys about being a corporate trainer is that you can't be a mamo komadanwa type of dial, right? You have to be humble about it. And a lot of the times people come into the whole game thinking mokakkari kokka kadinnan type of thing, where they're looking to sort of, some people come with that aggressive mindset, but that's okay, because I think it's all about you be humble about who you are and you're open about that with them. Like, I don't know everything, you don't know everything either, let's try and figure it out. Once you establish that, from there, of course, there are certain elements that you can use. So sometimes you need to be a bit extra, sometimes you need to take a step back. All of those things you have to do in terms of the feel and the vibe of the audience. And I think this entire thing is about credibility, emotion and logic, right? So credibility about yourself, emotion about connecting with the audience, and logic with the message you're passing. If you have that sorted out, then people are probably going to not cause too much of a fuss. When it's a big crowd, I think your presence is important, right? So if you're talking to like 4,000-5,000 people, do you have enough of a stage presence to sort of attract that attention and keep that crowd?
What made you become a corporate trainer?
Interesting question. Long time ago, I was an IT consultant, and then I went to a training program in Japan which questioned purpose in life, my values, my passion, and my ambition. Then I realized I was wasting my life's energy. So then I decided to become a corporate trainer because that I had a little bit of exposure to corporate training. And then I realized that that would be a space for me to an experiment to see whether I could live my life fully.
Well, I got into corporate training by accident because I used to work as a newsreader on radio for a long time. That job didn't work out. Then I worked at a publications company for a while. I got pretty bored, lovely people, but... And I saw this ad in the papers for a company, and I decided to go for the interview not knowing what it was about. I thought corporate training was about just telling people, you can do this. I had no idea this field existed. But they interviewed me, took a while, and then I joined that company, and then I discovered as I went along what it was. So I worked there for a while and then decided to branch out on my own. So it was a career that became a passion by absolute accident.
If you want to give someone an advice on starting as a corporate trainer, what would it be?
Corporate training is not about speaking. Corporate training is not about a PowerPoint slide, because most of the people who have just got into corporate training recently, they are just trying to speak and then they narrate out of a PowerPoint. It's not. They need to invest really to understand the organization psyche, the people's readiness to go through a training program, and then also invest in modern ways of training, because that nowadays you can't find, particularly the younger generation, they don't want to sit and listen to you for 8 hours. So another 5 years down the line, the things will be much more serious. So we need to find there are newer ways to engage, because there is a lot of opportunities in comes technology. So use all those things and see how best that you could deliver an impactful learning experience for the end user or for the company and for the participants. It's very essential to look at training as a more holistic, multimodal delivery mechanism rather than just speaking and PowerPoint.
I think you have to ask this question if you're trying to get into not just corporate training but any sort of career. Can I add value? Ask yourself if you can add value at every step of the way. If it's something that the participants can just look off the internet and have the same thing in less than 45 minutes, you're not adding value, right? You're just wasting time. So the question is, in terms of delivery, in terms of content, in terms of organization, in terms of technology, can I add value? Can I do something different to what exists currently? And that is the question you have to ask. Can you do it differently? Can you do it in a value-adding way? And if so, what are those ways? Figure out ways to market those ways, and then work will happen.
To what do you attribute your success?
My success is because of two reasons. A, I'm very good at connecting dots and then figuring out what's going to happen next. B is that I'm very good in creating innovative, novel experiences to make sure that the learning environments are much more richer and the reflections are much more deeper. So bringing in those two factors, that I have been able to always ahead of the rest of the training industry in the country.
I'm not sure how to answer that, because I have a question like, what is success? If I do a good program, is it success? If their behaviors change, is it success? It's such a broad question. Are we ever successful? I think it's a philosophical question. But for me, it's always about being present in the moment. In this moment, whatever I'm doing, I will do that to the best of my ability. So in that moment, having that presence, if I'm talking to a person, if I'm getting a need, I'm designing something, it's about in that moment present. Because if you are present in the moment, you're going to give your absolute to that thing you're doing. And I think that helps you do it better. I don't know if that translates to success, but that's how I look at giving my best at work. Makes me feel good. I guess that makes me successful.
From the Cubicle.
What do you know of each other as business personalities?
I know a lot about you because that I have known you for the last 9 years or so. So what I know very specifically about the personality that now you want to portray is that you want to be energetic, that you want to be very passionate, you would like to see it in others, and in the same time that I love the fact that you want to get the other people to change their perspectives. So that's what I like about you.
In terms of you as a business, it was interesting because you were my boss for the longest time. Ruki was the person who hired me to be a trainer, and he was my boss for 9 years until I decided to go out on my own. So as a personality, I'm going to take the business part out. Like as a personality, what I love about you is that whole how you just like to enrich people's lives, just opportunity and, giving people the chance to live their passion and being one of those, but I absolutely love that. I think I can put it down to the fact that, if you hadn't hired me that fateful day X many years ago.
I almost fired you.
Almost fired me also. Yeah, almost.
But
I think that, as a personality, I started out as my boss. Now I absolutely call you friend. Absolutely. Yeah.
What advice would you tell the other?
Tough question to tell another trainer what advice, but one thing that I would love if you could do is that I need you to create another legacy like you in another person. So it's all about that you finding a protege, making sure that you coach, mentor, and then making sure that your impact that you're creating is much more wider than a single individual, than being you.
I don't think I can give Ruki any advice, but what I would like to see is that as a person, Ruki he hasn't slowed down since the day I met him in terms of the things he's trying to do, and I would love to see that continue for as long as possible in terms of being that same person who's out there doing those things, and I don't see anything different, and I wish that would just continue infinitely.
It's tough.
What first impression did you have of each other?
I remember Fahad walking into my room for an interview. So I was looking at the CV, looking at him. Looks like an interesting person, but I need to see something beyond the CV. So I was just more than having an impression on the first thing. I was more curious to see who this person is, who the real personality behind what I saw those days behind the specs.
My first impression about Ruki, because it was an interview and it wasn't the most pleasant interview of my life. If certain words are not restricted, I can nicely tell. But since this is a proper program, I would say that he seemed like a character who was different. So when you see him, even his work, the way he speaks, because I was this young kid coming out of all these corporate-ish interviews, and this character was different. He was not wearing a tie, and he was not sitting behind this big sort of, it was so casual, and then it was that casualness that sort of, and it's a casual style that we've sort of continued in terms of how we approach work and our interactions as well. So it was it seemed like a knowledgeable person, but the potta didn't fit it. So I was like, it was a bit of a dissonance.
What do you think of each other's ventures?
What I think of was Fahad, he's very focused on what he wants to do. He wants to play a very identified space in the market, which is very good, because that as a corporate trainer, what you need to do is that you need to understand who you are, your strengths and your weaknesses, and stay within that target market. So what you're doing right now is very good. You need to make sure that you stay it, and in the same time make sure that what you are known for is what you are and what you are capable of. So Do not try to be everything to everybody. Stick to the space. You got a good space right now. That's what I think about you.
As far as Ruki, it's very inspiring to me because for Ruki, it's not about just doing some training and doing a program, whatever. He wants to create a movement. What I'm doing today is also as a result of that movement, where his movement is not just about him doing training or whatever, but about getting some other people involved, helping them live their passions. And as a venture, like for example, 361 Degrees is a great facilitator development program, and it's all about helping people grow while doing work. So that's what I admire the most about the venture, because I can directly attribute the fact that I'm somewhat successfully doing this corporate training thing today as a result of your venture. I can say that. So I have a lot of love, respect, and admiration for that.
Yeah.
What do you think about this program?
I was kind of thinking that more juicy questions would come, because, like, say for example, my style is not a very formal style. Those who know me know. So for example, sitting in a cubicle is something that I would never do. Sinhalen කියනවා නම් මලාට කරන්න නැති දෙයක්, which is why I got into this industry. I don't want to be stuck inside a cubicle. So I don't know. It of course it's interesting. I thought that I would be in more of an amaru, but it was okay, managed.
In my perspective, I think the questions and all those things gave me a bit of a different perspective. Okay, how I see him and how I see certain things, that in comparison to what he does and in comparison to what we do, all that. There were a couple of interesting questions that broke my mind, and I was expecting a bit more harder, much more funnier questions, but things are not there. It was quite okay, because that ultimately we spoke to each other in totally different perspective than what we spoke last time.
That's true.